just so I have that to share with some folks afterwards. And for those of you who are just joining or joining the recording, this is David Carr. I'm the instigator of the WordPress for Toastmasters project, and this is my informal office hours session to go over people's questions and to show off new features. So I was just showing Dwight how to set up automated reminders to people. So you can set the system up to send a reminder several hours before, or a day before, or a couple of days before your event. So for my Friday morning club, we actually set it to, I think, 2 days before. So on Wednesday, everybody gets a notification saying you signed up to be the speaker, you signed up to be the Toastmaster of the day, here are your responsibilities, and if for some reason you're actually not going to be able to fulfill that role, you need to let somebody know in a hurry, right? So it's in addition to any other communications that you'd be sending out, but the idea is to make it like clockwork, so even if you're traveling on business or you're busy, it's going to go out. So we can, what I've actually had in the system for a while is something where you can specify that you want to send automated reminders to everybody who has a role. You can now also set it to just send out the agenda automatically to everybody, whether they have a role or not. So the people who don't have the role will just get a prompt with the agenda, and maybe they'll see that there's an open role and fill that in. So this is where we would turn that on. You can actually have a couple of these. So you could have a 2 days before, and you could have a 4 hours before event. And I probably, as I was saying, I probably should expand that drop-down list to give more choices. But that's the way it works right now. So
are those radio buttons, or can you click them both?
Let's see.
When you turn one on, do you get the other one go off?
Well, this is also send reminders to members with no role.
Right. I didn't see the word also.
Maybe that's not as clear as it should be, and that's why I need feedback. But anyways, for right now, we're going to turn on both of those things, and we'll go down to save these settings. And I go back to my dashboard, which is the overview of everything. And Norman, one of the things I was just, this is Dwight, who's joined us. I was just explaining to him that I've tried to organize some of the most important features on this menu on the right-hand side. Okay. So things that are sort of buried in several different menus, I'm trying to bring them all together here. Okay. And one of those options is these email notification or reminder templates. So these are notifications of the subject and the body of the message, and you can type anything in here, but a bunch of these things are placeholder codes that get expanded when this message is generated and sent out. And the codes are documented down at the bottom. But one other thing that is just added is there's something here that says, see a preview of the Toastmasters meeting reminders based on who signed up for the next meeting. So let's follow that. And so this just kind of runs down the list based on who's signed up. We're on my demo site, so Abraham Lincoln's giving a speech next week. So it shows the, like for the evaluator, this is set up to show the speakers and evaluators who are signed up so far, so that you can see how those are lined up as of right now. And then it has something about if they entered a speech introduction into the system, that would be shown here. And here's some contact information. So we're trying to provide the tools for the evaluation team, including the general evaluator, to get organized ahead of the meeting and ask the speakers, what are their objectives, that sort of thing. So, and then we scroll down a little bit further. When we get to Toastmaster of the Day, so this is where I was saying it lists the people who have signed up for each role, but it also includes their contact information so that you can contact them. And then down the end of the list, it shows members without an assignment. So if you have open roles, you have it kind of all laid out for you that, David Carr isn't doing anything useful for this meeting, and we ought to pester him and make sure that he signs up to evaluate, that kind of thing. And then down the very bottom, we should see there's just the agenda that is sent out to everybody who doesn't have an assignment at this point. So all these people, it's showing just kind of a messy display of all those email addresses, but all those people who don't have a role yet will get the agenda and a link to where they can go to sign up for roles. So this is kind of the automated clockwork version of, what I tend to do a lot is sending out the agenda with and customizing that message a little bit more to say, we really need two evaluators still. We have 3 speakers and 1 evaluator, and we need to fill in those empty roles. So it's going to set this up to include the club name and agenda for the date, but I could also say, so you can customize this to draw attention to what you want to draw attention to, add your note up top, and send it out. So, Norman, I think you're familiar with that. And
I've been using this add a note feature in the past couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's the only mechanism I've been using.
Okay.
I use it this week, yes.
All right. So, I do have a list of things that I wanted to make sure to go over, but largely I did want to let this be driven by, what are the things that you need to understand better. What can I help with? I know, Dwight, I think you were one of the people who drove me to improve the functions for the random assignments, correct? Or am I getting
I'd asked about it, yes.
Okay. So we now have, if you go to either assign or recommend for any particular week's meeting, it will give you randomized assignments for the open roles. And it tries to look at people's history and suggest folks who have not filled that role recently, or maybe they've never done it. So, I mean, maybe I could show it better on the online presenters site or one of the other sites, but also the drop-down list has been modified so that whenever you're editing, you'll see when they last did the role, if they have done it before. So that's a hint to you too as a meeting planner. Now,
has been working quite well. I've used them for, well, scheduled ahead through the beginning of December, starting at the beginning of November, and it has been functioning pretty well.
Okay.
I just I haven't put in the roles that they've had in the past, so I've had to make some kind of adjustments for the lack of history in roles. But I have put in all the speeches,
right.
So that
That's obviously it's going to be more useful after you've used it for a while in terms of understanding the software, actually understanding people's history. Now, there were two modes to this. One was assign, and the other is recommend. And they're sort of separate menus for those things. But I did also add this checkbox here. So I'm in the editing mode or the assigning to people to roles mode so if I change George Washington to somebody else, it's actually going to save it in the background right away. But the thing I can do here is I can check recommend instead of assign. Maybe I'm not quite sure if this person is up to the awesome responsibilities of being an eye counter, or maybe even though they didn't mark themselves as being out of town, I'm suspicious that they might be out of town. So I can, after I check that, it gives me the option to add a personal note saying, and then if I go down and save this, instead of assigning that one, it's going to send an email message. And we can see a log of these things. So, it says that I recommended her for that role. And I probably could show you an example of it somewhere. Let's see if I can find one. Oh, there's one that showed up right there. You've been recommended for the role of invocation. So it says, Toastmaster David F. Carr has recommended you for the role on this date. Click here to accept. And, you know, if you're dealing with somebody who doesn't remember their is always forgetting their passwords, this is one function that will work just based on a code in the link. So they can accept the role, or they could send back a note saying, sorry, I'm going to be out of town.
What's the boomerang this?
I'm sorry?
The boomerang this.
Oh, that's I'm in Gmail.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just looking at an email message that was sent out through the system. Boomerang is an add-on to Gmail.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not responsible or to blame for that one.
I was blaming you.
Yeah. So let's say, I mean, I can take time just kind of going through all the settings. Are you guys clear on how to modify the agenda? Should I spend some time on that, or are you pretty clear on that?
I think so. I don't know, but I don't have a lot of questions, but I'm a neophyte, and I don't know what I don't know, really.
Right.
I got it working.
If you wanted to go through, that'd be fine with me, too.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, my basic feel for why you use WordPress is that it's, it's a more flexible system. Let's see. I guess I'll go to the event templates view here. It's a more flexible system. It's a more powerful system for publishing. But the fact that we're layering several pieces of software on top of each other does introduce complications. And even WordPress itself is more complicated than maybe Pre-Toast is, which is only for Toastmasters clubs. So there are trade-offs to everything. But the idea behind having templates is we lay out the standard way that we want to organize our meeting, but then we can modify it for individual events as well. So in the template, I would say I would lay out that we meet every Tuesday at 6:30. So that's part of it, and we can specify that we go for an hour and a half, and then there are all sorts of other things you can set for online clubs. I just did a post on setup for online clubs, but there are a bunch of things that you want to do to make sure that you publish. You include the time zone as part of your events, and also show how people can convert into their own time zone. So I'll turn that on for this template, and then these things here are placeholders. And if we looked at the text view that shows us the underlying code, it looks a little uglier if you're not comfortable, dealing with code. But I'm just trying to provide like a visual representation of these things. And it says double click for pop-up editor, so I can modify that from here. Something like that. And then for each of these agenda notes, we can specify whether it should appear just on the agenda or just on the website or in both places. And an example of where it appears just on the agenda, and that means it would only appear to somebody who's logged in and authorized to view the sort of the private view of our agenda, the printable view of the agenda. Or it also would appear in the email version of the agenda. For example, in the online club, we only publish the link to how to sign in. We make that visible to members. And then if people register to attend one of our meetings, they would also get that in the RSVP confirmation message. So I could set that to be just on the agenda. And also, some of these things, when people come to the website and they want to sign up for roles, they don't need to see, I call these stage directions. They're things about how the meeting is organized that matter while you're in the meeting, and they should be on the printed agenda, but they're not things that matter when you're trying to get people to treat it as a sign-up form. There are a few formatting options that I can choose for that content. If I wanted it to be extra large or something, I could do that. If you know the web coding standard CSS, you could add a little bit of custom code there, and you can add a link. And then there's this one called editable field, which maybe I should come back to in a second, but it shows that is for providing something that's editable at the same time that you would be editing the who's assigned to what on the agenda. And then if you're trying to show times on the agenda, you can assign a time to be consumed by this activity. So I just changed it from Sergeant of Arms opens the meeting to Sergeant of Arms also leads the Pledge of Allegiance. So maybe that requires 2 minutes instead of 1. So I could change that. And if I save that, we should see a couple of changes because we just made it a larger font. And also because this is a template, it's going to give me the option to generate all these individual events that are based on that template. So I can do that. So if we view one of these, we should see, oh, actually it only shows on, I set it to just show on the agenda, so. I need to get to where I can see the agenda view. So Sergeant of Arms is now in large, very large type. Not necessarily what we realistically would want, but you know, allows people. I mean, I have had I have clubs who have older members, and so they want to make all the fonts larger. You know, there are a number of things that you can do there to support different kinds of needs. If I want to go back and edit this, if I wanted to make this event a little bit different, maybe this is going to be an all table topics meeting and we'll have no speeches. So we could change the time assigned for table topics and delete the block for speeches. And this is what I was talking about with an editable note. So this is still going to come up in this agenda note editor. But instead of having the content typed in here, it says theme. So this is going to be our meeting theme. So we could change it to theme and word of the day. If I save that, so watching web pages load does not make great TV. Sorry about that. But so now if I go into the edit mode, the edit signups mode. So this is where I'm getting my meeting organized. Maybe I have a paper sign-up sheet that I brought back from the last meeting. I'm going to assign all these people to roles. But down at the bottom, I also get this little editing form where I can add the theme and the word of the day. So and if I save that, and part of the reason for keeping that separate from the editing I do on the back end is I'm trying to make this customizable for each meeting, whereas some of the other stuff is templated. So it's supposed to be, you know, the same format for each meeting, but we can have different, just like we can have different people signed up for the events, we can have different content in this word of the day block. And let's see, what else did I want to cover? Let me take a minute and just go through all the, I'm going to go through the settings screens just to explain what some of these settings mean for both RSVP Maker and Toastmasters. And again, there are links to the settings screens in this widget in the upper right-hand corner of the dashboard, or you can go down under settings and navigate to them. So this first field, you're probably going to leave blank. The idea there was that if an organization just had one type of event and they always wanted to have a block of content as part of that event listing, they could put it there. The event templates, like we use for the meetings, are sort of a more flexible way of doing that. And a bunch of these things are specific to collecting RSVPs through the website, which probably for a brick and mortar club, you don't really need to do that on a regular basis. You're probably more interested in just promoting your club events. But if you were doing, say, a speechcraft workshop, the RSVP feature might be something that you would make use of. So a lot of these things on the screen are just turning on things that we want to be able to use by default, or that we want to have turned on by default. Such as showing those add to Google Calendar or download to Outlook buttons, showing the time zone conversion button next to those calendar icons. Well, if you're a local club and all your members are local to you, the time zone is not really a mystery. For an online club, it's a big deal because I have members of online presenters here from Australia and such. Let's see. And a bunch of this other stuff, again, is related to the RSVP functionality. Might not be that relevant in every case. You can customize the options that appear on the RSVP form if you are using RSVPs or registrations. And again, we're in the settings, we're setting the default. On the settings screen, we're setting the defaults, but almost all of these things can be customized on a per meeting basis as well. The date format, again, here is where we would specify that we always want to include the time zone, if that is the case. And let's see, I think that's all that I need to cover here. The Toastmasters screen then gives you a way of setting from here whether the site should be public. And if it's not public, it doesn't mean it's top secret or password protected or anything. It just means it's not going to be advertising itself to Google and other search engines. You can also turn the email list off while you're testing and then turn it on when you're ready for email notifications to actually go out. This sync feature is relevant if you have, and this is only true for a handful of Toastmasters, most of whom are friends of mine. If you happen to be a member of multiple clubs that use the WordPress for Toastmasters software, you can synchronize your member records, like the list of speeches you've given and the project you've worked on. You can synchronize that between sites. That's actually automatic if both sites are on the toastmost.org domain, but if they're hosted independently, then you would have to have this synchronization feature turned on. It also does serve as a backup so that the data is backed up somewhere else if something goes horribly wrong. The time zone is shown here. This site was set up to be in Honolulu, but you can pick from any other city in the world. I mean, it doesn't list every single city in the world. It lists major capitals associated with that time zone. You can pick your officers based on the member list, and you can also tag somebody else to be an administrator. It's probably a good idea to have more than one person who's authorized to administer the website, just so that you have a backup. You can make people managers. Manager is a custom role that I created. And what it means is you have all the rights of an editor. So you can edit the homepage, you can edit any blog post, you can edit any event post, but you can also add members and edit member records, which an editor wouldn't have rights to do. So you can grant that permission to several people. And there's some features showing here that you actually probably wouldn't see. This thing about adding an email list. For several of my clubs, we have set up an email list where you can send a message to that address, and it goes to all members. We have a separate one for just the officers. So it's good if you're getting information in by email and you want to forward it to all your members or all your officers. So there's some on Toastmasters.org sites. I have to set that up for you. You can't do it 100% yourself. But I'm happy to do it on request. And then there's this thing about what format you want for your agenda. The one that I typically use is a sidebar agenda, or the custom agenda that is similar but allows you to edit it. And I could show you how to rearrange things on that agenda if that's relevant. You can add custom CSS formatting code if you know how to do that stuff. Show stoplight times on the agenda. We have this turned on for a number of my clubs now, and what that does is instead of just saying 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, it actually shows the colors. And if you have the budget to print your agenda in color, it looks kind of pretty. And it's also maybe a little bit clearer to somebody who's doing timer roll for the first time when they're supposed to turn on the different lights or show the different cards. So that's an option that you can turn on or not. Showing times on the agenda. So those are estimated times for each portion of the meeting. And if you turn that feature on, then you need to go through and actually estimate how long you're going to allow for different portions of the meeting. So that's another chore. There's a paper sign-up sheet that you can generate through the site, and somebody told me he wanted to be able to list 5 meetings on the agenda, whereas I'd always done 3. So now that is something that you can customize if you really want to. And then there's some options here for the random assignment to allow you to tweak some of the parameters there. It's a new feature that, seems to be working, but it's getting there. When people join the club, they will get an automatically generated message saying, welcome to our club, meaning welcome to the website, and it'll include their username and password, or I think it's a link to set their password. you can create a page on your site and specify that should be sent out to the member as part of that welcome message. So one of my VPE folks wanted to be able to set out a message that included, here's how you pick a mentor or get assigned a mentor. Here are dues, all this kind of orientation information. She wanted that to be part of the welcome message. And you can do that by creating a page. You probably just don't add that to any of the menus on your website, but you create that page, you add that content, and you would specify here that it should be included. And I should take a breath and ask for questions. Are there things that were unclear or that I need to go over again?
On the agenda, you have 3 styles: a custom, a sidebar, and a normal. Was that correct? The 3 styles?
Yeah, plain. I guess was probably the original recipe years ago. So a plain agenda would not have the sidebar on it. So this is set to custom. So we can go into, follow this link. And it's taking a minute here to load. So this has a custom header on it, a larger image. So again, these are similar to what I was showing you with the message templates. We have these placeholder codes. So this one's pretty obvious. It's the club name appears here. And then here's the meeting date. Here's the sidebar, and here's the main content. So this is a place where, and this is really more for people who know HTML coding and want to get it, just right, just special. But even if that's not you, you may have somebody in your club who could help you customize this a little bit more. So this is an HTML table format that says the sidebar should go on the left and the layout should go on the right. And it specifies how wide that sidebar should be. For the online club that I'm involved in, I actually customized it because we're not printing agendas and handing them out. So I actually have it. Well, actually, I could show you. Well, I don't know if it makes sense to take time for that, but I just have I got rid of the table formatting. I have the main agenda, and then I have the sidebar content listed down the bottom because, again, we're not going to print it. Part of the logic for having that sidebar format was to give you more space to fit things on one page. And it still might not always work out perfectly to one page. Most of the time it does.
What I was attempting to do was to put some meeting announcements on the sidebar and still keep the agenda within one side of one page.
Okay, let me, yeah, and that is what we do too. Let me show you Club Awesome. Okay. Here's Club Awesome. Let's see. Look at this agenda. So it's the sidebar. It has all this information about club dues. It does have the the listing of officers, and that's set up as a checkbox. You can pull that from the what's in the Toastmasters settings. And then we have some information about dues and the district website. And sometimes when we have a district conference coming up, we might have the announcements of what that date that is shown on the site. So you can actually fit a fair amount of information there. And the way you customize that sidebar is you go to either under setup, you can go to either agenda sidebar. Some of these have either main or, I guess for agenda sidebar, it's always applied to the template. Almost always. Let's say, I think there's a checkbox for that actually. So yeah, there is a way of applying it to this event only, but by default, we're going to apply it to all future events. And here's that content that appears on the web in the sidebar area, with a checkbox down at the bottom that says "Include my officers listing." So again, we're just pulling that from the setting what was set up on the website. So I could customize that to say really anything that I want to fit in that space. And you know, you could also through what I was showing you with this customization, if you wanted to make that sidebar a little bit wider, you thought that was a better way of fitting stuff in, you could actually just fiddle around with changing that number for the width. And the asterisk here just means that the right column will take up whatever space is not used by the left column. So that's just a basic HTML trick. And let's say, you know, you can't, because you can't really see what's going on from that panel there, you can view the agenda of a current meeting to see how that setup would relate to an actual upcoming meeting. And that header image is way too big, but I was just trying to show how it could be changed. Let's see. All right. You know, I'm kind of running out of gas a little bit. If you have other things that you want me to cover, I can do them now, or you can follow up with questions for me after.
Oh, thank you. You've given me some insight to go back and play with some things on the site, and then I'm sure I'll have questions after I do that.
Okay.
I think the one thing I was missing was that turning the notifications on.
Yeah.
And so once I get that going, then I can modify the notifications, test it out with our club members and see what they see and see if everything flows through.
Okay.
And make little modifications to agenda itself. And that might be the next step for practice and developing how we're going to use it.
Excellent. All right. Well, let me know what other questions pop up. And
okay. One more thing.
Sure.
We just started Pathways in District 36. I noticed that you have the Pathways selections on the speeches. Is there anything else that has to be done to collaborate with Pathways? Do you know?
Well, let's see. You know, I didn't really spend much time on. I guess I didn't spend any time looking at the progress report screens. I did a while ago add a. Well, actually, I can show it better on online presenters, I guess. So we do have at least one member who's from a district that's doing Pathways. Let's say. So if we go to progress reports. So just like there are things for who's doing what in competent communicator, there is a pathways tab that tracks that. I was, Norman, I think you were at the last meeting where I showed off the online evaluations function.
Yes.
That the pathways projects are loaded into that. You know, like a lot of this stuff, it might not be perfect. And so if you run into problems, let me know.
Okay.
And the tracking for pathways is going to be pretty basic right now. It's just going to show that they're working on presentation mastery level 1 and that they did a speech.
It probably doesn't have to be, because since all that stuff is in Basecamp.
Well, that's right. But I guess part of my idea was, well, first of all, as far as I understand it, Basecamp doesn't really do anything to help you organize your agenda up front.
No.
And also there was the idea that we could track the online evaluations mean that I could evaluate somebody for a pathways project, and they would get it in an email, and they wouldn't have to email me a PDF.
Okay.
I don't like the idea of emailing back and forth PDFs and scanning them and printing them and scanning them again. Yeah. And I'm Dwight, there's a video up on that I just posted on the Facebook page that shows what I demonstrated for the evaluations. But I thought one way this could be of use to brick and mortar clubs actually is if somebody shows up to the meeting without their book.
Yeah.
You could evaluate them on that task. So there's something here where I can request an evaluation for something that I did, and I can send that to another member. So it's just, sort of the same process as passing your book to another member to evaluate you. Or I can scan down the list and see who did what at the last meeting, and click to evaluate how well Dagmara did as our counter. That's the idea. So I'll leave it at that for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
And keep keeping me on my toes. All right. Talk to you later.
Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.